I imagine that it might be a bit too soon for celebrations, but it certainly looks like Ms. Losi has this in the bag.
Well, it looks like it's 99.9 in the bag unless something drastic happens overnight. But we do know that once nominations were done by the elections agency, it was the National Union of Mine Workers, NAHAU, and Pop Crew who rose up to say they propose that the nomination process be now closed with all positions of Cosatu's 6 national office bearers being uncontested. There was a nomination for the second deputy presidency, which was going to be a contestation between SACP and the National Union of Mine Workers. The NUM had nominated one of the regional chairpersons from the Highveld region. They withdrew their nomination, which was seconded by the National Health Workers Union, Health Education Workers Union, which would be NAHAU. So basically meaning that all 6 NOB positions of Cosatu for this conference were uncontested. So the results will be officially announced on Thursday when the newly elected president of Cosatu, which will arguably be Zingiswa Losi on the day, will then close the conference. We do understand that tomorrow, on the 3rd day of the conference, she will be chairing in her capacity as Cosatu's second deputy president of the outgoing leadership, which will be basically outgone by Thursday when the results are announced.
It certainly is a history-making Congress in the respect of electing their first female leaders. But of course, Samkele, especially within political parties, we've heard of the experiences that women face, and even the ANC will talk about the patriarchy that exists within the party structures. So in terms of the challenges that she will now have to almost be set up for, what do those look like?
Well, it looks like an uphill battle for her. For instance, she inherits a Cosatu which is largely depleted with losing over 600,000 members, 300,000 of those being former members or former affiliates of Cosatu in the form of the National Metal Workers Union of South Africa, NUMSA, who were expelled from Cosatu. You've got over 180,000 members of FAU who resigned from Cosatu to go and form SAFTU with NUMSA. And then you've got Cosatu, which largely depleted about 260 of its own members from all other affiliates due to infighting for resources within individual affiliates of Cosatu. You've had one of their biggest unions in history, which was the National Union of Mine Workers, NUM, before they were overtaken by NUMSA, whilst NUMSA was still in Cosatu, depleting most of its membership. For instance, the National Union of Mine Workers moved from over 380,000 members, and they're currently sitting at about 180,000 members. So, Kathy, that tells you the veracity of the problems that Cosatu is facing when it comes to the losing of its own members. For instance, I'll go to the address of the outgoing president of Cosatu, Dumadamini, where he says that Cosatu needs to go back to the drawing board and speak less about politics and start speaking more and more labor issues. For instance, they were criticized here by the ANC President Cyril Ramaphosa and the president of the country, saying that Cosatu is simply failing to claim its victories, such as the national minimum wage. They are failing to claim the victories of the national health insurance, which is now being legislated in parliament and being rolled out by the government of the day. Even the Minister of Mineral Resources and the former General Secretary of the National Union of Mine Workers, Gwede Mantashe, lashing out at Cosatu earlier on today, saying that they were found sleeping on the issue of labor brokers and outmaneuvered by the National Metal Workers Union of South Africa, NUMSA, who won that historic victory at the Corn Court, banning labor brokers in South Africa. So it seems as if Zingiswa Losi inherits a Cosatu which is largely on the back foot and is facing a tough battle in the labor political environment in South Africa from the newly formed federation, which is a splinter group from Cosatu in the form of SAFTU.
All right, then let's also talk about what else happened today. We saw the head of the SACP, Bladen Zamande, addressing today's Congress, and even his address, lambasting the corruption that we've seen. What was the reception to what he had to say and some of the key messages?
Well, Kathy, we've come to understand over the past 26 or 77 years or so that the relationship between the Congress of South African Trade Unions and the South African Communist Party, they are very close. They work together. For instance, they are housed in the same building. For instance, the SACP is a tenant of Cosatu at Cosatu House in Braamfontein. So they have a very close relationship. But Blade Nzimande over the years has been largely criticized for fueling and being part of the divisions within Cosatu. For instance, he came here and lambasted Cosatu and told them they are no longer the Cosatu that they used to be 3 years ago, saying that a weak Cosatu will not be taken serious by anyone, calling on Cosatu to go back to the ground and to forge a unity with the unions that have left Cosatu. But the vintage Blade Nzimande, Dr. Blade Nzimande, went in on the former president of the Republic of South Africa when it comes to state capture on corruption, saying that the former president is misleading innocent students. Remember, former President Jacob Zuma was at the Walter Sisulu University in the Eastern Cape addressing students of SASCO and saying that he does not know what is state capture, saying that the judiciary is not captured, that the legislative arm of the country is not captured, and the executive is not captured. So where does this state of capture come from, saying that these are fancy political terms that are coined in order to seek political gains or to outmaneuver our political opponents? So it seems as if Blade Nzimande was responding directly to his erstwhile political ally, now political foe, in the form of former President Jacob Zuma, saying that even now they will criticize the current incumbent ANC and they do want a reconfiguration of the alliance, and that they necessarily are not begging for jobs in cabinet. They've been fired before in that controversial midnight reshuffle that was done by former President Jacob Zuma, axing the then Minister of Higher Education in the form of Dr. Blade Nzimande, who's been very critical of state capture and corruption, saying that the State Capture Commission inquiry led by Deputy Chief Justice Raymond Zondo must be supported by all of society. Also going on to the alleged plot to remove the incumbent president of the country, Cyril Ramaphosa, saying that those who are plotting to remove President Cyril Ramaphosa are launching an offensive against the country and against those who are trying to clean up South Africa and the ANC.